Hey everybody, Steve Stine here. In this video, I had the opportunity to chat with Tim Pierce. If you know who Tim Pierce is, amazing session guitar player. He's been playing session work since the 80s. He's played on, thousands of recordings. Many I'm sure you've heard before. And Tim and I sat down and over the internet and got to talk about his approach to soloing over chords and what he thinks about in his approaches. So really, there's three main things that he talks about in here that I thought would be really amazing for you to watch. So be sure to check out Tim's YouTube page. I'll have a link below. And also Tim's masterclass as well. There will be a link below for that too. So let's go ahead and get started and see what Tim has to say. All right, everybody, I would love to introduce you to Tim Pierce, the mighty Tim Pierce. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good.
Good.
Not always so mighty, but I feel mighty when I'm around you. So
I tell you, if anybody out there doesn't know who Tim is, he's been on just about every cool album out there in the last 30 years. And one thing that I just find amazing, and I was just talking to Tim a little while ago about this, is how I spent many years of my life, trying to get faster at speed and playing metal, and everything was about, tricks and technique, and it's all good. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, really 5 years ago, when I really started finding a new experience, was being aware of chords and chord changes and groove, and really trying to become part of what the music was doing, where I always felt like I was playing over it and not inside it. And
right.
For me, that's your playing, Tim, is playing inside that experience of what's happening with music. So what I'm going to say to you is, today, if it's okay with you, what I'd like to talk about is your approach to chord changes. When you hear a chord, or a chord is coming, how do you approach that?
Absolutely. I mean, the benefit of, I moved here in 1980 and I started working right away as a musician. And the benefit to that is that everything I did was in a context. And that context was basically songs. And so very simple forms of music that people were singing over. I mean, I tried to do the Van Halen thing, and I really wasn't that guy. But what I was good at is playing guitar for songwriters and singers and artists. And I was able to start working at that immediately. So my training at playing over chord changes it was on-the-job training, basically. And it's literally, how do you get through A minor to D to F, and then it's nice when there's some key changes and some stuff, but it basically, it's a very pragmatic approach to playing over, simple chord changes. So yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll get to a couple of different things, but to start off with, let's say you were given, because there's two things that I always think about. If you were given a chord, like if I'm teaching a student and I say, okay, I want you to jam over this B minor. Well, your brain goes to this just B minor world. But if you're going from G to B minor or something like that, it's a completely different approach, because you're trying to think about this G and then the B minor in context of that G. So let's just start with something really simple like that. Tim,
okay.
Let's just say you were gonna solo over a B minor chord, right?
So if I'm soloing over B minor and it's just sitting on B minor, I can take liberties. Like I can do a Dorian minor scale. I can do a natural minor scale. Now, the Dorian scale, let's look at this, is basically in the key of A. And the natural minor scale is basically in the key of G. You don't have to worry about that. I'm just kind of trying to check myself on the theory of it. And then there's simply the blues, which is pentatonic blues. So you don't have to think that hard. If you're playing over B minor, I might just play pentatonically. I might do a sixth, which goes into the Dorian thing. Or I might do a natural minor thing. Those are the three places I would kind of hang out. But I tell you this, it would probably focus mostly on the 5-note pentatonic scale. Now, if you bring G into B minor, then that's pure. Now we're in all along the Watchtower mode. And that's basically, for me, natural minor. So it is the key of G. And what I would do is over the B minor, I'd play pentatonic blues. Then when it landed on the G, I would play with the chord tone that is G, or I might drop to the major 7th, and that would work too because you get this nice dissonance. Now let me demonstrate that. That's landing on G, and I'll do without. That's beautiful too, because I'm creating this. So I use chord tones, but I also use what are called color tones, which play against the chord tones. And sometimes you might want to resolve it. You could go and release that tension and land on the chord tone. Otherwise, other times you might just want to let it sit. Another good one is the 4th. That sounds good too. So what you would do is keep experimenting and find the places you like to land that you feel good about.
Okay, so I got a question for you, Tim, because this is perfect. So when you were learning this, were you learning this from a real world experience, or did you know your theory to, like, because what I've been really recognizing is the first thing that happens is you start becoming aware of, like, oh, you know, I'm moving from a G major chord to a B minor, for instance, and the dominant 7 of the B minor sounds really great coming from that G. But I'm assuming there's people out there that probably don't think that way at all. They just experience music on an aural level, so they're not even thinking about that. Like, where did it start for you?
Well, that's where it came from. My training is it's pretty amazing. I had a great guitar teacher, the greatest in the world. He's passed away. My only training is weekly lessons from the age of 12 to the age of 14. So I'm basically self-taught. Luckily, the music I've had to play over has been very simple. It's been A minor to D. And, you know, when you get into jazz, I can do a little of that, but I'm self-taught. All the musicians I'm around have more training than me. I've basically made peace with that. So for me, a lot of it is feel. A lot of it is figuring out what I like and then working backwards and explaining why it works, which is what I just did. I mean, the major 7th note, it's one of my favorite things. This dissonance is one of my favorite things. So that's what I just talked about. You can land on the chord tone when the band goes to G and we're in B minor, or you can land on the major 7th, and by itself it sounds kind of ugly, but when it's in context, it's a really beautiful dissonance. And that discovery came from in here and not thinking about it. And later in life, I've had to think about it more and try. Because if you want to advance, you can't have it just be instinct. You actually have to, go further and try and learn what you're doing so you can advance. Okay,
so I mean, that's perfect. Let's say somebody's watching this and this is something that they're really into, but they're not exactly sure how to get started. Would you recommend that they learn some basic fundamental theory to kind of understand what chord tones and non-chord tones are?
Absolutely. It's the Nashville number system. That, for me, my teacher was good enough to teach me. Steve taught me basically the Nashville number system. And once you learn that and you think of things in terms of their numbers, we go to the key of G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Once you learn that, you pretty much can carry you through an entire career if you're playing, in rock, pop, soul, R&B, country. You get into jazz and that's a whole different story. Sure. So yes, just that little bit of theory, and it's not hard. It's not really hard. You learn the chords that are associated, you learn the modes, and once you learn them, they're yours for life.
Okay, so I've got one more question for you. I don't want to take too much of your time. And then do you maybe have something you could jam to at the end to kind of let people see how things work for you?
Absolutely. So I have a track here. Let's listen.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, so what we had there was A minor to D over F sharp, which is basically D, and then F. So it was kind of the same thing we were talking about. If you look at it in a simplified way, it's A minor to F, which is the same as the B minor to G thing we just did. It's just down a whole step.
Right.
And then I throw in the D, and I have to pay attention to that. So there's two ways you can do this. You can either ignore everything and just play A minor pentatonic, and that's a valid thing because that sounds good. Okay, always return to that. It's fine. It's great. It feels good. It sounds good. Or you can start playing with chord tones. And so we're in A minor, and I see an A minor here, right? You see the little shapes all over the neck. If you can get it to where you can see A minor everywhere, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. You can use those little shapes and play chord tones. Okay, and depending on where my hand is, when it goes to D, I just use convenience. If I'm here, because my hand is sitting there, I do the third of D when the band goes to D. Okay, then quickly, I can't stay there because the next chord, that's not a good dissonance. That's when it goes to F, you're gonna get that. So I have to bail out. And that's a good choice because I see the F right there. So if you see shapes, you see the A minor, A minor, A minor, A minor, A minor, you see D. And then when it goes to F, these are all like stones in the river that you can jump on. So what I did to bail out there, here we have A minor. The band goes to D. You can see the D right there. And then quickly, I have to adapt to the F. I can go up here. And when I do that, I'm seeing F right here. But the other convenient thing about this is that A minor and F pretty much can share all the same notes. So you really, the only thing to pay attention to in this particular case, and that's often there's just one chord that you have to be, you have to be wary about, and that's the case here. So I can play an A minor. When it goes to D, and when it goes to F, I can just go back to A minor. So there's three things I do. I play simple melodies. I find chord shapes. And I play pentatonic blues. And so by cycling through those three modes, I can usually do a solo that's interesting. And I'll combine sweetness with aggression. And I pay attention to the chords, but usually when I return to pentatonic playing, I ignore the chords.
Right.
But this D, you can really play with it in a nice way. But it's important to visualize the chord shapes everywhere on the neck to be able to do that. And the last thing is, wherever your hand is sitting, there's a solution. So if my hand is here, and the band goes to D, it's right there. I didn't have to move my hand. I just had to drop my third finger on the third of D.
Right. Wow, that's cool. So if we think about this, a lot of players, when they first start learning how to play, and this would certainly include me, I've always called it linear playing, which is where you're just kind of coexisting over the top of something. So this A minor, D, F is happening, and you're just playing pentatonic, not really interacting with those chords. And you can do that. And obviously, Tim just did that for us. But once you start becoming aware of actually interacting with those chords and being aware of some of the notes that you can emphasize, and the cool thing of this example was D doesn't fit with the A minor and the F, so he had to step outside for that particular amount of time and then decide where he wants to go after that. So a takeaway, a beautiful takeaway from Tim today is that. And the second part is what he said about the positions across the guitar. You can see, as Tim was playing, that he's all over the place, right? So he's seeing all these chords and scale shapes in different places. And I just, again, you do it, so that's what I'm learning how to do. And I really love it, but I love to watch you do it because you're so smooth at it because you've been doing it for so long.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me bring up one thing that people might have a question about. If there's no F chord in this progression and it goes A minor to D, Then you can just stay in the Dorian mode, and you don't have to worry. Basically, the F chord and the D chord together are what's giving this the challenge, basically, and that's why you have to shift scales, unless you're playing pentatonically. Playing pentatonically is great because it just sounds good. All of a sudden, you're B.B. King.
Yeah, right.
Or Stevie Ray Vaughan. So it's always good to return to that. And then one thing Alan Hines taught me is that if you're playing to the chords, you can actually make the chords sound like I'm going to show you. You're going to hear the chords, even though I'm not playing them. So here's A minor. There was D, and here's F. So you can play in a way where you can hear the chords without the chords being there. Let me do it one more time. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you could hear A minor, D, and F, and that's the kind of benefit to that kind of playing.
Yeah.
But
okay. So, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's important to do opposites. So that, to me, is the opposite of playing pentatonically. So to keep a solo interesting, I'll play pentatonically. And then I'll do arpeggios. And then I'll do simple melodies, say even on one string. Just to keep it interesting.
That's awesome. I got one more question for you about this. So when you are doing that, and let's say you go to that D, right? So the D is, depending on how we're looking at this, let's look at it as D is sitting outside the A and the F, okay? So when you go to that D and you're playing the D major arpeggio, what other notes are you choosing to add in there? Like, are you keeping it pretty major? Or again, is that kind of up in the air on what filler notes around that arpeggio would you be using?
Okay, so if you're talking about the D chord, the tonality of the D being major, absolutely. Because I figure if I'm going to go there and play the third of D, I'm going to go there all the way. I mean, the Allman Brothers were one of my favorite bands, and they did that all the time. Dickie Betts was there all the time, and never afraid of that third.
Right.
And because that third is the difference, that's the whole difference between A minor and F. It's not available in A minor, in the A minor or the F.
Right.
I like to do it on the D so that you really hear the change.
Yeah,
I mean, it's great. It's a half step. Now, you might make a choice and say, I don't want to sound happy. And that might be a choice. And if that's the case, then you would avoid the third. I'll demonstrate that.
Wow.
And that's a choice. I mean, you could ignore, the third of the D, and it would sound less happy in that spot.
Right. That's super cool. Well, thanks, Tim. I mean, we're going to be doing some videos in the future, and so please do me a favor, check out Tim's YouTube page as well. He's got just amazing stuff on there. So thanks, Tim, for your time. Thanks for showing us that. And next time we get together, I'm hoping that we can expand that a little bit, because you're talking about exactly where I'm living right now with my guitar playing. So this is great.
Yeah, and I'm just getting started. I'd love to keep going.
Yeah, that's good. All right, well, take care, buddy. I'll talk to you soon, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor and like it and share it. And also make sure that you click to subscribe to my channel, and also make sure that you check out Tim's channel as well. I'm going to have a link for that here and in the description as well. So thank you so much, and have a great day.